Welcome to Roman Code. My name is Matt, and today I'm going to show you a brief example of how to create and consume context in both React and Qwik. Here's an example of a React parent component who is creating context for its child component. In this simple example, we are simply providing the value of count as well as the setCount method to update the count in the child component. I will do a brief walkthrough of the code, then step through changing this to the Qwik equivalent, and then the next slide will be a side-by-side comparison. So first, we are creating a context and providing the default values to the context. This is the parent component declaration. We are using useState to store and update the value of count. In React, you would then need to create a context provider in the JSX and supply the value. Here I'm supplying both the value of the count and the setCount method. The child component will now be able to access the context that is wrapped inside of the count context provider. Moving down to the child, we have the component declaration once again. We are grabbing the count value and setCount method out of the count context using the useContext hook. This is a button where we are calling the setCount method on the onClick handler to update the value of count. Then below the button, we are rendering out the value of count. So here again is the full React component. Let's start making this the Qwik equivalent. In Qwik, we simply create the context ID by passing it a unique string. Then let's update both the parent and child component declarations. So we simply wrap those in the component $function. Next, we're going to replace the useState hook with the useSignal hook. One thing that is different is we need to add the useContext hook to the parent component. So here we specify the context ID, which is count context in this example, and the value to place in the context. Since we already have the useContext above, providing the context, we do not need to place any provider in the JSX. So let's just remove those. Moving down to the child, let's update how to get the value out of the context. Here I'm simply getting the signal out of the context directly. Then we can move down and update our onClick handler. Since we provided a signal, we can just update the value of the count signal directly. Lastly, we just need to update how we render out the value of the count signal. So simply add the dot value to the count, and we are all set. This is the final Qwik context equivalent. So let's take a look at these side by side. Move my face a little bit. All right. So here's our side by side of the difference between a basic context example in React and Qwik. As with my last few videos, you'll notice that the code is very similar, though in my opinion, Qwik is just slightly easier. So first, we just declare a unique context ID. We wrap our component in the component $syntax. We use signals or stores to hold our state. We call useContextProvider, pass in the context ID and the value to provide to the context. There is no need to pass anything special to the JSX. We grab the value of the context, is essentially the same. We can increment the value of the count signal directly, and to simply render it out, you add the dot value. So let's take a look at some live code. So I've got a couple sandboxes, so here's our React sandbox. The code is essentially identical to what you saw in the other example. So you can see that our parent has our useState, our child is getting it out of context, and then on Qwik, I'm just setting the count. In Qwik, added some TypeScript stuff up here, so if you're not familiar with TypeScript, you can kind of ignore that, but let's refresh to make sure it's all live. And so once again, we create our context ID. We pass our context ID and the value of the signal. we have no provider anywhere. And then in the child, we simply consume that count out of the use context hook and update the value directly. So that was Qwik. To learn more, check out qwik.dev, or to play with Qwik in a sandbox, check out qwik.new. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.